In the last video, we made a guessing game where the user had to guess a number between 1 and 10 and they had 3 tries. The only feedback they got was whether they were correct or incorrect. Now that's fine and dandy, but is that fun of a game? No. We're going to try and improve this game by copying it and making some changes. Okay, so what I want you to do is go on to the bottom left of your computer, right click on the start menu and click Open Windows Explorer. I want you to go to your H drive, find wherever you saved your guessing game. So I called mine Mr. Davis Guessing Game. I'm going to copy it. I'm just going to paste it. So right click, copy, right click, paste. And then somewhere it should say Guessing Game Copy. We want to rename this. So it's not going to be called Guessing Game anymore. It's going to be called Higher or Lower Game. Okay? And once you rename it, press Enter and double click on it to open it up. So I'm going to exit out of my old guessing game and make sure you have your higher or lower game now opened up. So we're going to make a couple of changes. First of all, they're not going to guess a number between 1 and 10. We actually want them to guess a number between, let's say, 1 and 100. So we are going to unlock our text layer at the top here, and we're going to change that so that it says I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Okay, we're also going to give them an unlimited amount of guesses. We just want them to try and figure out how quickly they can guess, or basically get a high score. So the fewest amount of guesses will earn them a high score. So we're not going to say you have 3 tries to guess the number. We're just going to get rid of that line there. So all it's saying is I'm thinking of a guess between 1 and 100. We do still want to keep track of their guess number. We do still want them to allow input, and we do still want to give them feedback. So let's lock our text layer so we don't accidentally mess it up. Let's actually generate a number between 1 and 100. Okay, so I'm going to go into our actions, tap F9, and where did we generate a number? Right here. So we're generating a random number between 0 and 9.999 here. It gets rounded down, so we ended up with numbers between 0 and 9. And we add 1, so we get 1 to 10. We want 1 to 100, so let's change this to 100. And let's change our comment a number between 1 and 100. Okay. So now if we run, oh, there's no way to really tell that this has done anything, because it's either you're going to guess it right or you're going to guess it wrong, right? So you can try guessing and maybe you'll get lucky. And nope, the answer was 28. So at least we know now that it is going above 10. Okay, so remember what I said before, we're not going to limit how many guesses they can have. So we're going to see this max guesses thing here, we're going to get rid of it and press delete. And now if we tried running now, it'll give us an error because remember we used max guesses. So there we go, now it's saying undefined property max guesses. So I'm just going to double click on this here and it ends up being on line 37. We're checking to see if they ran out of guesses. So we no longer want to check to see if they ran out of guesses. So this part right here, sorry you lost, the answer was whatever, we want to get rid of this. Okay. And now if we get rid of our if statement, well, you can't have an else on its own, so let's also get rid of this else statement. Okay. So now what we have so far is if they did enter a guess and they guessed incorrectly, we're going to add on to their guesses, and we're going to tell them what the guess was, and that, well, it wasn't correct, right? So run this. Now we should have an unlimited amount of tries to guess this number. So I can say 1, 50, 100, 35, and I mean, this would take a really long time, potentially up to 100 tries if they wanted to try every single number, right? Well, that's not fun. That's kind of mean. Who's going to sit here and try and guess 100 numbers? So let's give the player a little more feedback. Let's actually check to see if the number they guessed was higher or lower than our actual number, and then give them that feedback. So instead of saying not whatever they guessed here, we want to check. So right here, I'm going to put an if statement. We're going to say if txt input dot text is greater than number, and we want to say something else, right? But this isn't going to work. Can we check to see if text is greater than a number? No. So up here, we converted our number to a string to do a comparison. Here, we're going to convert our string to a number. So the way we do that is, well, what data type did we use for number? Let's go up here and check. It was an integer, okay? So we're gonna convert this text to an integer. So we're gonna say int, all lowercase, and then just surround text in parentheses, okay? So we're gonna say if guess was higher. Well, what do you wanna say? We don't wanna say not that. We want feedback text to say, let's just move this up into our if statement. We'll say txt feedback.text equals, well, the guess was higher, so we want to tell them lower, okay? Else if, right? So let's check else if, well, we want to check to see if the guess was lower, right? So we're going to copy everything we have in this if statement here, paste it right here, close our parentheses, and get our curly brackets set up. So now, else if, well, not greater than, we want to see if it was lower. So if the guess was less than the actual number, we want to tell them that they should guess higher, okay? So now if I run, do the hokey pokey, and you turn yourself around. So it says, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. If I don't enter a guess, it still says you didn't enter a guess yet. If I put in 50, it says it's higher. Okay, so what about 75? Higher still. Okay, so what about 90? So no, so it's between 75 and 90. How about 80? Okay, so it's between 80 and, let's try 85. Higher, 86, 87. There you go, 87. Let's handle keeping track of a high score. We're going to go back into our actions, and right below where we created our number to hold the number the player is trying to guess, we want to create a variable that will keep track of the high score. Okay, so I'm going to say var, I'm going to call it high score, tell it it's type integer because it's just going to be a whole number, and we need to set it equal to something to start. When we start, there's not going to be a high score. So if the highest score, I mean the lowest number of guesses, well, to start, we want to set this number really big, okay? So all of our data types can only hold a certain amount of data, and if you want to figure out how much they can hold, you can just type in the data type. So I'm going to put int dot max value. This will give me the largest number that we can actually store in an int type, okay? So I'm going to end that line with a semicolon, and now we have a place to keep track of our high scores. So if we go down to where the code goes, if they guess correctly, we're telling them they got it, the number was blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. This is where we want to enter in our high score. And we only want to enter in our high score if the number of guesses, so, guess num, is less than whatever we currently have in our high score. So if our high score is 5 guesses and it takes our user 4 guesses, then they'll get a new high score. So if guess num is less than whatever is currently in high score, that's why we gave high score such a large value, we want to say that high score equals guess num. Okay, so right here, this is just set the high score, and this if statement here is going to check for high score. Okay, But now we need to actually display that somewhere, right? So let's go back into our stage. So I'm going to close out of our actions real quick. I go onto the timeline, and we need to add more to our text. So I'm going to unlock our text layer. I'm going to select the frame, and what we're going to need here is some dynamic text. So I'm going to click on our text tool. First of all, use your selection tool. Make sure you have nothing selected. Then I'm going to go into our text tool. Okay, and make sure it says dynamic text. And let's see, where should we put this? We'll put this above here. We'll move some stuff around. So for now, let's just click, and we will say high score number. And this will just be a placeholder for now. So drag it out if you need to give it the right size. And I don't really want multi-line, I want single line behavior, so I just changed it to single line. Drag this out, give us some extra room, and now we can move stuff around. So let's move our high score somewhere, we can just set it top, and we'll drag this static text here down just a little bit. Okay, so our high score, let's make sure it's centered using our align panel. Make sure it's set align to stage, just align it to the horizontal center. Good. So now, let's actually give the high score an instance name. We'll say txt high score. So now if we run, well, nothing's really going to happen because we never changed anything with the code, but you see it says high score and then a number. So we're actually going to want to hide this until our user actually gets a high score. So let's lock our text layer. Let's go into our actions. And to start, just like we cleared out our input and our feedback text, we want to clear out high score text. Okay, so we'll say txt high score dot text equals nothing, right? And then now when they get it correct, that's when we want to actually set the text. So we'll say right here, set the text. We'll say txt high score dot text equals, well, whatever is in high score. Actually, no, that's not what we want. We don't want to just say the high score. We need to also give it a label so that they know that it is the high score. Okay, oops. Let me put this back. There we go. Okay, so now it should set the text when they get a high score. So if we run, let's just test this out. We'll say 50, higher, 75, lower. How about 60, higher, 65, higher, 70, 73. Got it. High score is 6 because I got it on guess 6. But what if I keep going now, right? If I try 74, now I'm just going to keep going. You got number 73. Well, 7's not lower, so that's fine. But we do need a button to actually reset the game so that we can play again, right? Because once they get the high score, we want to give them another chance. So let's create another button. And here is the magical trick that maybe you all would have liked to know about when we were doing the buttons assignment. If we go into our library, we have our button, our submit button. We can right click on it, click duplicate, and it'll ask us to give it a new name. So we don't want it to be called submit button, we want it to be called reset button. Click OK. So now we have submit and reset button. Well, they look exactly the same, so let's change that. So let's click on our reset button, double click on the image here, and go into the text layer, right? And use our text tool, and we'll just change this to say reset. And if we use our selection tool and our align panel, we can align it to the center, and now we have a button that says reset. But I don't want to make that too simple, so let's lock our text, unlock our base. On the up frame of our base, let's select our button. Let's change the color to be red. On our over frame, well, we can just copy now up frame now. So our over frame will paste. On our down frame we'll paste. So now we have up, over, and down. Remember, on the over, we want it to be lighter. So let's go into our color wheel and make this a little bit lighter. There we go. In our down frame, we want to make this darker. So let's make this dark. And now we have a reset button. So I'm going to lock my base, go back to my scene, go to my library, and drag on. Oops. Sorry, we have to make sure we're on the right layer. So that's why we locked our layer. So click on the button layer, unlock it, and then go to your library and drag on a copy of the reset button. Bam. So now we have 2 buttons. Okay. And now we can actually rename this layer to buttons, so that way it makes sense. So let's get this lined up nice and pretty, right? I'm going to select reset and submit buttons. I'm going to uncheck align to stage, and I'm going to align them to the vertical center. And I'm just going to move them around so that, well, we need to move them around so that the player can actually submit. That looks good enough for me. So mine's a little ugly. Yours can be prettier. So I'm going to lock my buttons layer and run just to make sure that my reset button is actually clickable, which it is, and submit still works. Now that we know our buttons are clickable, I forgot to give reset an instance name, a reset button. So unlock your buttons layer one more time. Selection tool to click on reset, and let's give it a name. I'm going to call it BTN reset. Okay. Press enter. Now we can lock our buttons layer. We can go under our actions again. And now that we added our reset button, let's add an event listener, a quick listener for our reset button. So I'm just going to copy and paste what we have here. So instead of button reset, or sorry, button submit, we want button reset. Still a mouse event for click. And instead of submit input, we want to reset game. Okay, so it's going to look very similar to submit input. So let's just copy this, and we're going to put this all the way on the bottom here after this curly bracket, and we call this reset game. Okay, so what do we need to reset when we reset the game? Well, we need to reset the number of guesses, and we need to generate a new number. Okay, so what did we use on the top here? For our number used math.floor, we floored math.random times 100, and then we added 1. Okay, so let's copy all this here, go back to the bottom. So now when we reset the game, you want to set number equal to a new value, 1 through 100. Okay, we want to, what else do we want to do? We want to set the number of guesses equal to 1, right? Because if you remember at the top, we said guess num equals 1. Oops, sorry, not number of guesses, guess num. So make sure you get your names right. So go back down here, make sure it says guess num. Okay, so we're setting our number equal to a new random number. We're setting guess num equal to 1. Well, now we need to reset the guess num to what it should have been. So not the guess num, but we need to reset the text so that it says what it did the first time around, right? So after we reset guess num, we need to fix our text, right? So let's take this guess num equals, so the guess number text equals guess number plus whatever guess num is. So we'll copy that, put it right down here. What else do we need to reset? Let's go to the very top. So we need to reset our input text. We need to reset our feedback text. We don't need to reset our high score text because, well, now there's a high score. So let's take these two, copy it, and paste, and just tab everything out so it's nice and pretty. Let's put some comments here. Reset guess number text, and right here we'll say reset guess number. Okay, so now let's test this out. So think of a number between 1 and 10. So if I guess something, 1 is higher, 4 still says higher. If I click reset, we have guess 1, and it's still thinking of a number between 1 and 100. If I type in 50, now it says higher. Let's try 75. Lower, let's try 60, 65, 63. There you go, 63. The high score was 5 guesses. If I click reset, we still have a high score up here. Now I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 100. Well, let's try to see if we can beat this high score really quick. Lower than 50. Higher than 25. Oh man, I'm getting nervous. How about 40? Lower than 40. 35. 30. Oh man, I can't beat my... How did I do so well first time? So my guess was not lower, so it didn't replace the high score. Let's try this again, but let's also cheat just a little bit, okay? So every time we reset the game, let's trace out the number so that we know what the number is, okay? So I'm going to save and run this. So now when we click reset, the number is 43. So let's make a couple of wrong guesses at first. I'm going to say 43. Submit. I got it correct. My high score is 4. Let's reset. So the number is now 32. If I say 32 the first time, see the high score now changes. So there we have it. Now just go back into your actions. Make sure you delete this trace statement so that way no one can cheat your game. And now we have a higher or lower game. Good job.